They don't make them like they used to. Now, this is a phrase you hear a lot in the modern day when referencing any form of pop culture, TV shows, movies, books. But I hear it the most when talking about video games. And for the most part, I don't agree. I think that a lot of video games in different genres today are better than anything we got in the past. Like, you're going to tell me you think Devil May Cry 1 is better than Devil May Cry 5? You're going to tell me you think the original God of War is better than God of War Ragnarok? No, it's not true. You're going to tell me you think Mortal Kombat 4 is better than Mortal Kombat 11? No. But there is one genre of game that I do actually think this is true about, and that's RPGs. Now, there are some exceptions to this. Obviously, if you think of Clair Obscur Expedition 33, Baldur's Gate 3, these games are phenomenal. And to me, part of the reason for that is they fit right at home in what I call the golden age of RPGs. So what is the golden age of RPGs? That's a good question. Clearly, you want the answer because you saw the title of this video and clicked on it. To me, the golden age of RPGs is from the mid 2000s to the mid 2010s. If you're looking for like a timeline as far as like game to game, think of it like Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, like 2005 2006 range, to The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. There's some kind of magic that happened in that like 10-year time span. I don't know what Western RPG developers were putting in their games back then, but that's when I think RPGs were at their best. And that's why I think games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Divinity Original Sin 2 really hit with so many people. It's because they feel like that era of RPG. My name is Cole Wolfrun, and today I'm going to talk about my favorite era of RPG gaming and what I like to call Golden Age of RPGs. Now, in this video, I'm mostly going to be talking about Western RPGs, but I do want to highlight some JRPGs that I feel like fit right into that timeline as well. Obviously, you have your Final Fantasy X, Drakengard 1, Nier Replicant, not the remake, obviously the original. Those fit into that timeline as well, kind of. They're a little outside of it for some of them, but those are games I feel like fit right in that golden age of RPGs. But for me, the golden age really starts with the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. Oblivion was such a big deal when it came out that every, and I mean every, RPG developer was labeling their game the Oblivion Killer for a few years after Oblivion came out, even. Think about games like Two Worlds 2, anything like that that came out in that time frame. Their entire purpose, their goal, was to compete with Bethesda and Oblivion. And Bethesda is a great example of the golden age of RPGs. Think about them in that time span of like 2006 to 2015. We had Oblivion, we had Skyrim, we had Skyrim again, we had Skyrim again, we had Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout New Vegas. Those games are infinitely superior to anything we've gotten from Bethesda since. Now you might be saying, Cole, what have we gotten from Bethesda since? Well, aside from like 4 different re-releases of Skyrim, Starfield, the worst Bethesda game ever made, in my opinion. At least the worst Bethesda game in the same style as Fallout and The Elder Scrolls. They highlight what is this golden age better than any company except one. That other company is a little bit more of a deep dive. But first, let's think about what made games like Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout work so well. Big thing was the freedom for the player to explore and do kind of whatever they wanted. Now, obviously, there were a little bit of restraints, but you were not put on rails in these games. That's what makes open world games so appealing and why every modern game company is trying to make open world games, while missing the point of what makes these games good. Ubisoft is a good example of how to do it wrong. They just fill the map with bullshit. They fill the map with nothing to do except collect little things and bullshit side quests that don't actually matter. Meanwhile, games like Oblivion, Skyrim, Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, they filled their worlds with side quests that were fun and engaging and actually gave you stuff to do. And there are some open world games that do this similar concept just as well, if not better, than Bethesda did in this time frame. Game that pops in my head is Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning. A really underrated game that deserves more love than it gets. Kingdoms of Amalur was full of fun and engaging side quests It had a beautiful art style. The main story was fun. The combat was just so good. It was a great game. And it fits right in with games like Skyrim and Oblivion while being its own unique thing. And that is a big thing about this timeline. All of these games feel somewhat similar. Like there's things in Kingdoms of Amalur you can point to and be like, oh, that reminds me of Oblivion, or that reminds me of Dragon Age. But it still feels like its own game. And that's something I think we've lost over the years. The only games that feel unique and like their own thing are sequels to previous games. Look at Dragon's Dogma 2. That is one of the best action RPGs we've gotten in a long time. But it's just the first game with updates. Hell, even Baldur's Gate 3 just feels like, well, Baldur's Gate 3. It feels like Dragon Age Origins and Baldur's Gate 2 had a baby. And that's awesome. But we don't see enough of that. We don't see enough uniqueness in RPGs nowadays. And I feel part of that comes from every RPG, every video game trying to copy Skyrim, trying to copy Breath of the Wild, trying to copy Elden Ring. And it's just led to a lack of creativity. And one company in this 2000s era, there's two companies actually, that really cement creativity in RPGs and uniqueness. We're going to talk about them next. The first of these two companies I want to talk about is CD Projekt Red. Now, CD Projekt, they had a rocky start with The Witcher 1. But even though The Witcher 1 is a clunky mess of a game to play, the story's phenomenal. This is a trend that's going to kind of be shown a lot in this video, is a lot of these companies' first game, the thing that drew you in was the story, the characters, the exploration, and just how unique it was, not the gameplay. And that's kind of a big thing with RPGs I feel like has been lost. The Witcher 1 is not fun to play. And that's why I'm very excited for the remake we're getting. But that kind of ties me into another problem that we'll talk about more later. The Witcher 1, though, good game, solid game. If you take out the gameplay, it's a 9 out of 10. But the gameplay brings it down to like a 6 or 7 out of 10. But another thing that CD Projekt did really well was learning and getting better. And The Witcher 2 Assassins of Kings is one of the best RPGs ever made. It is phenomenal. The story, immaculate. The characters, better than they were in the first game. The combat, it's a little better. Yeah, the Witcher series, that's their biggest downfall, is just the gameplay has never really been that great. You're just hoping The Witcher 4 can be better. But The Witcher 2 was an improvement over The Witcher 1. And at the time playing The Witcher 2 when it first came out on console, on Xbox 360, I was sitting there going, there's no way they're going to top this with The Witcher 3. Like, there's just no way. And then I played it. And The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt is one of my favorite games of all time. And I think is one of the 3 best games from the golden age of RPGs. There is very little wrong with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. And the worst thing about it, once again, is its combat. But even then, it is a massive improvement over The Witcher 2. And that is one of the beautiful things about CD Projekt as they've gone with the Witcher games. They just got better and better and better. And the story, oh, perfect ending to Geralt's story, perfect just in general, fleshing out of everything we've seen in the first 2 games, while also bringing in a lot of stuff from the books, and actually leading me to read the books when I played The Witcher 3, because I wanted to learn more about Ciri, I wanted to learn more about Yennefer, I wanted to learn more about everything that was brought up in The Witcher 3, but not really expanded upon because it's dealt with in the books. And CD Projekt just nailed the Witcher trilogy. Now, obviously, we have The Witcher 4 coming soon, and I am very hopeful for that, as well as a remake of The Witcher 1. And I'm hoping we can recapture some of that golden age magic with those games. Now, I want to talk about the company that I feel like was the king of the golden age of RPGs. And it's a company who, unfortunately, ever since then, has had a massive downfall. It is formerly my favorite video game company of all time, BioWare. Now, some people may be scratching their heads when I say that, and they'd be like, BioWare? BioWare's not even a good game company anymore. You're correct. But BioWare ruled the fucking world for almost 20 years when it comes to gaming. They got their start with Baldur's Gate 1 and Baldur's Gate 2, and then they made the KOTOR games, which, shameless plug, I'm currently playing KOTOR, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, for the first time on my YouTube channel. Go check it out. There's a playlist on, and go watch it. And those three games, Baldur's Gate 1, Baldur's Gate 2, and KOTOR, kind of put BioWare on the map and made them kind of a big deal. But BioWare really became this pinnacle of RPGs with two games, Mass Effect 1 and Dragon Age Origins. Mass Effect 1 really just took what they did with KOTOR and expanded upon it and blew it out of the water. And once again, this is an example of the first game has horrible combat. Now, if you're playing it in modern day, play the Legendary Edition. The Legendary Edition of the Mass Effect trilogy is just better in every way than the original three games actually were. So, combat in Mass Effect 1 is actually decent in the Legendary Edition. But when it first released, the combat was ass. However, just like with The Witcher 1, Mass Effect 1's story was so damn good. People didn't care about the clunky combat. Well, some people did, but they're losers. People cared about the story, the characters. People wanted to fuck Garrus, and we were really mad we couldn't. And us male players are still mad that Garrus is straight. Rant for another time. But Mass Effect 1 kind of opened the door for a lot of RPGs because romance had already kind of been a thing in RPGs, but BioWare is really the company that solidified it as a regular thing in RPGs. They had it in Baldur's Gate 2, had it in KOTOR, had it in Jade Empire of all games. But Mass Effect is really where it picked up for them. So much so that they were in the news in America a lot for their sex scenes having partial nudity, and companies were calling for the game and the company to be banned. We really didn't have a lot going on in 2008, guys. But Mass Effect 1 opened the door for BioWare, and Dragon Age Origins flooded them with praise. Dragon Age Origins is still considered by many people, including myself, to be one of, if not the best Western RPG of all time. Usually when people talk about the best Western RPGs of all time, there's a few games that get mentioned. Baldur's Gate 2, Dragon Age Origins, The Witcher 3. Now Baldur's Gate 3 gets thrown in there as well. But to me, Dragon Age Origins is far and away the best game from this golden age of RPGs. Maybe not even from a gameplay perspective, but from a story and characters perspective. Because Dragon Age is hardly a super original story, but it tackles these not original story beats in a very unique and fun way. The characters are reminiscent of other characters in fantasy media, but they're just done so well and in such a unique way that you love them. I still, to this day, my favorite Dragon Age companions are Alistair, Morrigan, and Leliana. And Sten's up there in the top 10. Do I love characters from Dragon Age Inquisition and Dragon Age 2, which are also in this golden age? We'll get to them later. Yeah, but nothing really stands up compared to Dragon Age Origins. Dragon Age Origins, to me, was the game that really made me a hardcore gamer. When I was a kid and an early teenager, I didn't play too many Western RPGs. The only RPGs I really played were games like Drakengard and Final Fantasy. And the rest of the games I played was stuff like Dynasty Warriors and Mortal Kombat, Soul Calibur. I was a fighting game and an action game guy. I played Ninja Gaiden all day. And then I played Dragon Age Origins. And my world changed. And I'm not the first person to say that, and I'm certainly not going to be the last. Dragon Age Origins, every time someone plays it, I rarely see people say anything negative about it. Does it have its problems? Absolutely. Graphically, hasn't aged very well. The console versions of the gameplay's kind of bad on console. On PC, though, it has clunky combat, but effective combat. Now, granted, you guys have heard me rant in my Let's Plays before that I'm not a huge fan of real-time with pause and the way that Dragon Age Origins did it, but I still enjoy that game's gameplay. I know it's not great. I still like it. But that's kind of the point I'm making. We didn't care that much about the gameplay. We cared about the story, the characters, the lore, the decisions. And that's what BioWare was the king of. Now, in CD Projekt games like The Witcher 1, The Witcher 2, The Witcher 3, there were decisions to be made, and Elder Scrolls games had decisions you had to make that could change things. But BioWare was really the first company to say, hey, your decisions you make in this game fundamentally change the world around you. And that was such a cool thing. Like, most other game companies didn't do that with their RPGs. And even for all Bethesda had with decision making, they didn't do that. The things you did in Oblivion didn't really matter because when Skyrim came out, there was a canon that happened. There was things that happened in Oblivion, whether you did them or not. BioWare didn't play that game. BioWare said your decisions fucking matter. To a point that when Mass Effect 2 first came out for the PlayStation 3, which was the first PlayStation console to get a Mass Effect game, we got a DLC that let us make the decisions from the first game. It was a comic. It wasn't executed the best, but it was a fun way to let players make decisions from the previous games if they couldn't import their save. BioWare used to care so much about that. I was about to go on a huge rant about Dragon Age Veilguard. That'll be another video. But BioWare, that was their thing. That was the thing they cared about. And that's why modern BioWare games have been pissing fans off so much. Mass Effect Andromeda, Anthem, Dragon Age Veilguard. It doesn't feel the same because the story doesn't feel like it matters and your decisions don't feel like they matter. Of those three games, the only one of them that feels like things matter is Mass Effect Andromeda. But back to the good stuff. And after Dragon Age Origins came out, BioWare had a lot of pressure on them. And very quickly, they proved they could capitalize on the pressure with Mass Effect 2. My favorite game in the Mass Effect trilogy and one of my favorite games of all time. Mass Effect 2 took everything Mass Effect 1 did and made it insanely upgraded. Better. Every positive word you could use for the transition from Mass Effect 1 to Mass Effect 2, you could. The one thing they did that a lot of people were kind of like, oh, that kind of sucks, was you couldn't free roam planets anymore in the Mako, and the RPG elements were a little bit lighter. However, to compensate for that, the gameplay was actually good. Mass Effect 2 has a Gears of War style cover shooter system, and it works very well for Mass Effect. Now, Mass Effect 1 kind of also had that, but Mass Effect 1 felt like it couldn't decide if it wanted to be Gears of War or Halo. Mass Effect 2 firmly sits on the Gears of War cover-based shooter system, and it did it really, really well. Mass Effect 2's gameplay is very fun. But even more than that, the story and the characters were just as good, if not better, and the world was fleshed out so much more. In Mass Effect 1, you got a good grasp of the Citadel Council and the races like that, and it was pretty well done. But in Mass Effect 2, you get to see so much more of the galaxy. You get to learn more about the galaxy through your companions and through NPCs like Aria T'Loak. It was just a better game. It was just a better game than the first Mass Effect. Now, I understand a lot of people out there actually think Mass Effect 1 is the best Mass Effect. I'm going to have to respectfully disagree. I think it's the worst of the original trilogy, and hot take, I think Mass Effect 1 and Mass Effect Andromeda are on equal footing. I know. I said the horrible thing. But I think Mass Effect 2 is the best Mass Effect game. And after Mass Effect 2 is where we started to see a slight decline from BioWare. However, they came back. And where that slight decline began was actually not the fault of BioWare, it was the fault of EA. EA forced BioWare to rush out the sequel to Dragon Age Origins in a year and a half. So we got Dragon Age 2 sooner than we expected. In fact, the game that we got as Dragon Age 2 was originally intended to be a spin-off game. So yes, Dragon Age 2, which is all about Hawk, was going to be its own spin-off game called Dragon Age Legacy. And when EA came to BioWare and said, what do you have for Dragon Age? And they said, oh, we have the spin-off. They went, nah, change the name to Dragon Age 2 and finish it. That's the sequel. And it came out with mixed reviews. I will be honest, as a teenager, I think I was a senior in high school when Dragon Age 2 came out. Yes, I'm that fucking old. Shut up. I loved it. I liked it. Did I like it as good as Dragon Age Origins? No, but I thought it was a fun game, and it was a unique take on Dragon Age. Also, hot take, even though I said before Alistair and Morgan and stuff are my favorite Dragon Age companions ever, it's actually Alistair and Liliana, but if I don't say Morgan, people will kill me. Dragon Age 2, I think, has overall the best cast of characters in any RPG like this. Yes, better than Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3. Yes, better than Dragon Age Inquisition. Yes, better than Baldur's Gate 3. Though not by much on that one. But Dragon Age 2, that was the really thing that was better. And it's kind of where we see a trend from BioWare where they make a couple things way better and a couple things worse, but still the games are really good. Dragon Age 2 had much better combat than Dragon Age Origins, and in my opinion has the best combat of the first 3 Dragon Age games. The characters were more fleshed out and had more time to develop because the game took place over a span of 10 years instead of 1. And that's about it. Graphically, it looked about the same, and the dumbing down of the RPG mechanics, which, yes, Dragon Age 2 did dumb them down, was not very good. And overall, it was just an inferior game to Dragon Age Origins. However, if a game like Dragon Age 2 came out today, people would fucking love it because they'd be like, oh my god, a good RPG. Holy shit. Now, is it Baldur's Gate 3 or Expedition 33 level good? No, it is not. It is nowhere near as good as those games. But better than 99% of RPGs that come out nowadays. And I will die on that hill. And then after Dragon Age 2 came out to mostly positive reception from fans, but mixed reception from critics, Mass Effect 3 got a rush job put on it. And we got the biggest controversy from BioWare ever, which is the ending to Mass Effect 3, but I'm not really going to go over all that. There's other YouTubers who have gone over that in so much detail. I'm going to look at Mass Effect 3 when it was a completed product. And when it was a completed product, Mass Effect 3 is almost as good as Mass Effect 2. I think the ending's fine. It did way better in the gameplay mechanics features. There's some problems I have with it, like I don't like how none of the squad mates from Mass Effect 2 came back who weren't also in Mass Effect 1. I don't like the smaller roster, but other than that, I think Mass Effect 3 is one of the best shooter RPGs ever made. I just don't think it's as good as the second game. I have a similar take with Dragon Age Inquisition. I think it is on par with Dragon Age 2, but for different reasons. I can do a whole video about this later, but Dragon Age Inquisition to me is a little bit better than Dragon Age 2 in a lot of ways, and a little bit worse in some ways, but still, Dragon Age Inquisition is a phenomenal game. It just stands out as one of the best RPGs ever made still to some people. And that's kind of the whole crux of this golden age of RPGs. Everything was good. Well, not everything. There was some stinkers like games like Bound by Flame and Demonicon. Do not play Demonicon. Do not play it. It's bad. But Western RPGs just hit different. And I know this video was just kind of a ramble about some of my favorite games, but that's kind of the whole point of the golden age of RPGs. Now that I'm done just rambling, talking about how much I love these games, what do I think is the thing that made them so much better than games nowadays? I've talked a little bit about it. Let's go a little bit deeper. Now, we already talked about the open world side of this, where like open world games in this golden age used to actually kind of mean something. Even the best open world games nowadays just kind of feel hollow, empty, soulless. Like, that's why Skyrim, I think, is held in such high regard, because it felt like a living, breathing world. It was fun to explore. The side quests were more engaging than the main quest, which is honestly a feat in and of itself. Other open world RPGs did the same thing, like Dragon's Dogma did this. And yes, Dragon's Dogma also fits into this golden age. Dragon's Dogma is fucking awesome. If you think Dragon's Dogma is a bad game, you're dumb. We're going to talk about Dragon's Dogma a little bit later. But Kingdoms of Amalur, also great open world RPG with incredible side quests, fun combat, and just a beautiful world to explore. And that's the thing I think a lot of modern open world games try to focus too much on. Look how pretty our world is. I think I can point everything that's wrong with open world games nowadays to, I can point at Crimson Desert for that. Crimson Desert was a game I was actually pretty excited about because for all of the like media that was coming out about it, all the trailers, all the clips, I was like, okay, this look, this looks like an old game. This looks like a game I would have loved when I was in high school or college. Yeah. All right, we're back. And I have not been more disappointed in a game since Anthem. Crimson Desert is one of the worst examples of a modern day game. It is content for the sake of content. It has no soul. The combat is fun, but it's not unique. Nothing about Crimson Desert is trying to do anything super unique. It's trying to be Breath of the Wild. It's trying to be Elden Ring. It's trying to be Assassin's Creed. It's trying to be Devil May Cry. It's trying to be any video game out there that makes money, but it's not trying to have its own identity. And that is a huge problem with modern games, modern RPGs specifically, mostly open world games. Even Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I have similar problems to those games. Now, I'm a huge Zelda fan, but I didn't really talk about any Zelda games in this video because they're not RPGs. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are the closest thing Zelda's ever had to RPGs, and I'm not a huge fan of them. I enjoy them. I played them. They were good games. I liked them. That's one thing I can say for them over something like Crimson Desert is I actually enjoyed them. But they just didn't have the same soul to them that games like Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time did. And as an open world RPG, they just didn't feel good to me. The same repeated dungeon over and over is not something you should want in a Zelda game or in an open world RPG. And that's my big problem with modern games. And that's why it's kind of been refreshing playing Dragon's Dogma 2 on my own, because Dragon's Dogma 2 has its own identity. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a very fun open world game with great combat, and it's it's just been a lot of fun, and it's got its own identity. It's not trying to be any other game, except that it's a carbon copy of the first Dragon's Dogma. You can't really blame Capcom for making Dragon's Dogma 2 just Dragon's Dogma 1 again with a new coat of paint and slightly upgraded combat mechanics. Because Dragon's Dogma 1 is a phenomenal game and one of the best RPGs ever made. I mean, the vocation system, being able to pick a class and go all the way through till the end, get all the skills, and then just go, you know what? I want to go into a different class and completely change the way I play. You want to do a hybrid class that's like a mix of fighter and rogue? Cool, go for it. You want to play a big two-handed warrior and then immediately change your mind and become a mystic knight? Hell yeah, bro. Do it. Dragon's Dogma 1 is one of the most unique video games I've ever played, so it makes sense that Dragon's Dogma 2 would just do the same thing. And when people were saying that as a complaint, I was like, oh, come on. This is exactly what I wanted. I wanted more Dragon's Dogma 1. And Dragon's Dogma 2 does have some changes, but that would be major spoilers if I talked about it, so just go play the game for yourself. But it kind of does reiterate the point I've been making. There is a lack of originality in modern RPGs. I want RPGs to make me feel like what I'm doing matters. That's why games like Baldur's Gate 3 and Expedition 33 are so valuable right now. At first, when I thought about this, I was like, oh, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm getting older. Maybe I'm bitter. Maybe I'm just an old man yelling at clouds. Because I wasn't enjoying hardly any new RPGs. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that's not the case. Because when I played Clay Obscure Expedition 33 for the first time, it was like when I was 9 years old and I first played Final Fantasy X. I had that same feeling. When I first played Baldur's Gate 3, I was warped back to being a 16-year-old kid playing Dragon Age Origins for the first time. They felt the same. So game companies can do it. They can make games that have that same sense of wonder, that same amazing story. Stories that where you make decisions that matter. Stories that actually make you feel something and aren't cheap shock value. But they just don't want to. I don't want to play games like Crimson Desert. I don't want games that are just carbon copies of every other open world game out there with no substance, that are trying to be every other game, but itself. Games like Crimson Desert don't want to have their own identity. They want to be the game that makes money. And that is one thing I think the gaming industry has fallen back on. Now, yes, obviously, game companies want to make money. They need to make money to pay their bills. They want to be successful. But I feel like too many game companies have stopped making things that they want to make and are just making mass market appeal. And that is a problem. Even game companies who used to make some of the best RPGs ever, like BioWare. Now, when we get a new BioWare game, it's a cheap imitation of what we got before. Dragon Age: The Veilguard, when I first played it, I enjoyed because it was Dragon Age, and I liked seeing old faces again. And at first, it gave me that same feeling that like Dragon Age 2 or Dragon Age Inquisition did. Like, oh man, it's this world I love. But the more I played it, the more disappointed I got. Your decisions didn't matter. Nothing you did in Veilguard had any purpose. And nothing you did in the previous 3 games mattered anymore. They didn't care. BioWare didn't care about your world state. BioWare didn't care about Ferelden or Orlais anymore. It didn't matter. Veilguard was all that mattered. And aside from its combat, Dragon Age of Veilguard is the worst BioWare game ever made. And I will die on that hill too. And that game really shows the problems. Now, we can go deep dive and we can see like that it wasn't fully BioWare's fault, that it was really a lot of EA's fault. But BioWare also made those decisions for the story, for the characters. And there's glimmers there. There's glimmers of good character writing, like with characters like Emmerich and Daffrin. But then the rest of the game is just mediocre. And I think that's worse. A mediocre game in a franchise that is nothing but perfection before it. I would almost rather a shitty game. At least Mass Effect Andromeda is entertaining. It has decent writing. That's a video for another day. I highlight this to really highlight that game companies should be doing more. They should be putting in the effort to make games like Baldur's Gate 3, Expedition 33. Hell, I haven't really talked about Souls-likes in this video, but because I have plans to make a similar video to this about Souls-likes. Game companies should be putting in the effort to make games like Elden Ring. Nobody wants games like Crimson Desert and Dragon Age: The Veilguard. We want games that make us feel like our characters, our choices, and we matter to this world. And if you're the type of person who plays RPGs for the gameplay and the combat, great. But we shouldn't get passable combat in games. Like, even though I've talked about Crimson Desert, Dragon Age of Veilguard have fun combat. Mass Effect Andromeda has fun combat. They're still not great games. You can have both. You can have both. So the entire point of this video is there was a golden age of RPGs. It has passed us by. But I, personally, hope it comes back. And there's some hope on the horizon. We've already seen the first stages. Baldur's Gate 3, Dragon's Dogma 2, Expedition 33. And there's hope on the horizon. We have the new Fable coming out next year, which looks to be just as good as Fable 2. We won't talk about Fable 3. We have The Witcher 4. There are games coming that I'm hopeful for. And if some of the recent greats have given me anything, it's hope. And I could sit here and be pessimistic and be like, oh, well, they're going to suck, and then who cares if 1 or 2 great ones come out because everything else is going to be trash. I'm choosing not to. I'm choosing to be optimistic about the future. And I just want the golden age of RPGs to come back. Now, Throughout this video, I talked about some of my favorite games in this golden age. I specifically left out Souls games because I have another video planned talking about them specifically. But my question to you guys watching is, what is your golden age of RPGs? And if you agree with me and the timeline, what's your favorite game from this era of RPGs? I'm always curious to see what other people think are the best RPGs. And even if we don't agree, I'll respect your opinion. Unless you say it's Dragon Age of Velgard. Then you're dumb. You're not dumb, you just have bad taste. Anyways, guys, my name's Cole Wolfrun. I love RPGs. I would love to make more videos like this. This is really the first video of this type that I've ever made. So if you enjoyed this video, let me know. Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe even become a member if you think I've earned it. You get special bonuses if you become a member, and it also helps me get these videos out faster for you guys. I want to make more videos like this. So if you like the video, let me know, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching, everybody.